My daughter humiliated me in front of her friends, saying I was old and stupid, so I canceled the college that I paid for her. Before we begin, drop a comment below telling me where in the world you are listening, and make sure to subscribe for more life-changing journeys. The envelope from Princeton University felt heavy in my hands. I traced my fingers over the embossed logo before handing it to Olivia. After 19 years of sacrifice, sleepless nights, and second jobs, my daughter's future was sealed inside. I got in! Olivia's scream pierced the kitchen as she danced around. Mom, I got in! Princeton, can you believe it? I couldn't stop the tears. Your father would have been so proud, I whispered, remembering Robert and how we'd dreamed of starting a family before his car accident 20 years ago. Olivia was already texting everyone she knew. We have to celebrate, like a real party. She looked up, her eyes calculating rather than joyful. The Henderson twins got into Yale, and their parents rented out Bellini's. Sweetheart, that's a bit out of our price range. I started, mentally reviewing our savings account. Mom, it's Princeton. Her voice took on that edge I'd learned to dread. Do you want me to look pathetic compared to everyone else? It's bad enough I have to say I'm adopted when people ask why my mom is practically a senior citizen. The barb stung, but I pushed it aside like I always did. Of course not, honey. We'll figure something out. 3 weeks later, our modest house was transformed into what Olivia deemed an acceptable celebration venue. I dipped into my emergency fund for catering, decorations, and even hired student bartenders. I stood in the kitchen, arranging hors d'oeuvres, when Olivia burst in with 3 friends from Lakeside Prep. Mom, where are the little shrimp things? She demanded, barely looking at me. Coming right up, I smiled at her friends. Congratulations to all of you on your acceptances. Mrs. Sullivan, your home is lovely, said Emma, the only one who bothered to meet my eyes. Oh God, Mom, don't start with the small talk. Olivia rolled her eyes. Just bring the food out when it's ready. After they left, I leaned against the counter, willing away the hurt. This was Olivia's night. The party was in full swing when I ventured upstairs for more napkins. As I passed the guest bedroom, I heard Olivia's laugh, followed by, "Can you imagine having to explain her to my college friends?" I froze, hand halfway to the doorknob. At least your real mom was probably young and cool. I recognized Brooke Henderson's voice. Like, was she a teen mom or something? I tell everyone my parents were brilliant grad students who died in an accident, Olivia said casually. It's less embarrassing than admitting I was adopted by a desperate old woman who couldn't have kids of her own. The ice in my veins spread to my fingertips. But she's paying for Princeton, right? Another voice asked. That's pretty generous. She's mortgaging the house, Olivia snorted, as if I'd let her off the hook after all the time she embarrassed me. Do you know last parent-teacher night she asked Mr. Phillips what existentialism meant? In front of everyone. It's not my fault she's too stupid to understand half the books I read. Laughter rippled through the room. She's like having a housekeeper who thinks she's your mom, Olivia continued, always hovering, asking about my day like she could possibly understand what my life is like. God, I can't wait to get to Princeton and finally drop the act. What act? Emma asked quietly. The Grateful Daughter Act. Olivia's voice dripped with contempt. Do you know how exhausting it is pretending to care about her feelings? Oh, Mom, thank you so much for working double shifts so I could go to ballet. She mimicked me cruelly, as if she didn't get exactly what she wanted someone to make her pathetic life seem meaningful. A glass shattered downstairs, followed by cheers. I should move, should confront her, should do something other than stand here, letting each word cut deeper. But you'll still visit her, right? Emma pressed. Only until I get my inheritance, Olivia laughed. The old lady's not going to live forever, and when she kicks it, this house is mine. Then I'll finally be free. I backed away silently, retreating to my bedroom. I caught my reflection in the mirror, gray-streaked hair, lines around my eyes, the dress I'd splurged on for tonight. For the first time, I saw myself through Olivia's eyes, old, unsophisticated, embarrassing. The sounds of celebration continued downstairs, but inside me, something vital had cracked the foundation I'd built my entire adult life upon. The daughter I thought I knew, the love I thought we shared, the sacrifices I thought had meaning. It was all a lie, and I had no idea what to do next. The morning after the party, I cleaned up the aftermath while Olivia slept upstairs. Every champagne flute I washed, every crumpled napkin I collected, felt like evidence of my own naivety. "Mom, is there coffee?" Olivia shuffled in around noon, hair tangled, eyes puffy from too little sleep. I poured her a cup without speaking. "Great party, right?" She scrolled through her phone. "Brooke's mom asked where we catered from." I told her it was the new place downtown, not that cheap deli you actually used. The casual lie struck me differently now. How many others had there been? "Olivia," I said quietly, "we need to talk." "Can't. Meeting Emma for brunch in an hour." She glanced up, finally noticing my expression. "What's wrong with you? You look weird." "I overheard your conversation with your friends last night, in the guest room." The change was instantaneous. Her face shifted from annoyance to calculation in a heartbeat. "What conversation?" she asked carefully. "The one where you called me old and stupid, where you said I was like a housekeeper, where you talked about waiting for me to die so you could get your inheritance." Olivia's laugh was too bright, too rehearsed. "Mom, we were just joking around. You know how girls are, we say crazy things just to sound cool. Do you tell people your real parents were brilliant grad students who died?" Her smile faltered. "I can't believe you're eavesdropping on me at my own celebration party. Answer the question, Olivia. What does it matter?" She slammed her coffee cup down. "You know how people look at me when they realize I'm adopted, all that fake sympathy and those questions about my real family. It's easier to make something up, something that doesn't include me." "You're being ridiculous." She grabbed her phone. "I don't have time for this. I need to get ready." As she turned to leave, I said, "We need to discuss Princeton." "What's there to discuss? We already decided I'm going." "No, you decided. And I agreed to mortgage the house to make it happen. But now..." Something dangerous flashed in her eyes. "But now what? You're threatening to not pay for college because your feelings are hurt? Grow up." "Mom!" I flinched as if she'd struck me. In 19 years, I'd never heard such naked contempt in her voice. "This isn't about hurt feelings," I said. "This is about realizing I don't know who you are. I'm the same person I've always been." She crossed her arms. "You're just finally paying attention." That admission hung between us, damning in its honesty. "What happened to you?" I whispered. "Nothing happened to me," she spat. "Maybe this is who I've always been, and you were too desperate for someone to love you to notice." The cruelty was so calculated, so precise, I knew instantly she'd thought these words before. "Go to your brunch," I said, my voice eerily calm. "We'll continue this conversation when you get back." "There's nothing to continue." She grabbed her purse. "Just get over it and go back to planning how you'll redecorate my room when I leave for Princeton." After she slammed the door, I sank into a kitchen chair. In the quiet of our home, I tried to reconcile the daughter I thought I knew with the stranger who'd just walked out. I pulled out my phone and called the one person who might help me make sense of this. "Susan, it's Margaret. I need to talk to you about Olivia." My oldest friend hesitated before answering. "I've been waiting for this call for years, Maggie. Remember when Olivia was 16 and she told you I couldn't make your birthday dinner because I was sick?" Susan's voice crackled through the phone. "Yes," I replied, a knot forming in my stomach. "I wasn't sick. She called me that morning and said you wanted to keep it just family because you were feeling sensitive about turning 55. My grip tightened on the phone. "But I specifically asked her to invite you." "That's not all," Susan continued. "Remember when you couldn't attend my sister's funeral because Olivia had that panic attack before her theater performance? Of course, I felt terrible leaving you alone that day. Maggie, I saw her backstage 15 minutes after you called to cancel. She was laughing with her castmates like nothing had happened. The room seemed to tilt. That's not possible. She was hyperventilating. I'm sorry, but it's true. I have more examples if you need them." I didn't need more, but I listened anyway as Susan detailed years of manipulation. Olivia sabotaging my friendship with Anne from book club. Olivia telling my date Richard that I'd described him as financially unstable. Olivia losing birthday gifts from friends and later selling them online. "Why didn't you tell me?" I finally asked. Susan sighed. "I tried, subtly, many times, but you always had an explanation, a justification. After a while, it seemed kinder to let you believe what you needed to believe." After hanging up, I sat motionless at the kitchen table. Then, with sudden determination, I climbed the stairs to Olivia's room. I'd never invaded her privacy before. Now, I opened drawers, checked under the mattress, rifled through her desk. In the back of her closet, I found a shoebox filled with jewelry I thought had been lost years ago. My mother's pearl earrings, the bracelet Robert gave me on our 5th anniversary, even the sapphire pendant that had supposedly been stolen during a break-in. Under her bed was a leather-bound journal with a small lock. The key was on her keychain, the one she'd left behind in her rush. My hands trembled as I opened it, knowing I was crossing a line. The first entry was dated 3 years ago. Another day of playing the perfect daughter. Sometimes I think I deserve an Oscar for this performance. M bought me that stupid laptop for getting straight A's, as if I would accept anything less than top of the line. Told her it would help with college applications, and watched her practically empty her savings account. So predictable. I flipped forward, each page more damning than the last. M thinks I'm at SAT prep on Thursdays, actually going to Tyler's house. His parents are never home, and he always has good stuff. If M ever found out I was drinking, she'd probably cry for days. So pathetic. The most recent entry made my blood run cold. Met with Dr. Hansen about M's cognitive decline. He wouldn't commit to anything without seeing her, but gave me information about power of attorney. Once I'm 21, if I can document enough concerning behaviors, I could potentially manage her finances. 2 more years of playing the devoted daughter, then the house is as good as mine. She'll never know what hit her. I closed the journal, feeling physically ill. This wasn't teenage rebellion or normal growing pains. This was calculated, long-term deception. My phone pinged with a notification from my banking app, a $500 charge at Nordstrom that I hadn't authorized. I checked my wallet. My credit card was still there, but I remembered Olivia asking to borrow it last week to buy textbooks online. With shaking hands, I logged into my account to see months of unexplained charges. High-end restaurants, clothing stores, rideshare services to addresses I didn't recognize. I opened her laptop, password protected, of course, but I knew her patterns. I tried Princeton 2025 and was immediately granted access. Her email confirmed everything. Correspondence with Princeton about the exclusive summer program in Oxford she'd never mentioned. Messages to friends mocking my career, my education, my appearance. A draft letter to her high school counselor explaining why she was rejecting a full scholarship to State University in favor of Princeton. A full scholarship she'd never told me about. The sound of the front door jolted me back to reality. I quickly returned everything to its place and made my way downstairs, a strange calm settling over me. Olivia breezed in, still scrolling through her phone. "Emma says hi," she said without looking up. "Did you have a nice time?" My voice sounded foreign to my own ears. "It was fine. Look, about earlier." "I've been thinking," I interrupted. "You're right. I overreacted." Suspicion flashed across her face, quickly replaced by satisfaction. "Good. I knew you'd see reason. We should start making plans for Princeton. There's so much to do before September." Relief washed over her features. She thought she'd won, just like always. But as I smiled and nodded while she chattered about dorm decorations, I made a silent vow. This would be the last time Olivia Sullivan manipulated me. The game was about to change. The law office of Wilson & Associates occupied the 10th floor of a modest building downtown. Benjamin Wilson, my late husband's friend and our family attorney for 20 years, greeted me with a warm handshake. "Margaret, it's been too long," he said, guiding me to his office. "When you called, you mentioned some unexpected news?" I settled into the chair across from his desk. "Yes, it's about Robert's investment in that tech startup, NeuroSync." Ben nodded, recognition crossing his features. "The one you always called his lottery ticket?" "That's the one," I smiled faintly. Robert was so excited about their neural interface technology, even though everyone said it was too speculative. "I remember trying to talk him out of it," Ben admitted. "Not my finest moment as a financial advisor." "Well, I got a call yesterday. NeuroSync has been acquired by Mindframe Industries." I slid the paperwork across his desk. Apparently Robert's lottery ticket just paid off. Ben's eyes widened as he reviewed the documents. "Margaret, this is substantial. $560,000, I said, the number still surreal to me. "After taxes. This changes everything for you." "It does," I agreed, "but not in the way you might think." I spent the next hour explaining the situation with Olivia, the overheard conversation, Susan's revelations, the evidence I'd found. Ben listened without interruption, his expression growing increasingly troubled. "I understand your distress," he said finally. But what exactly are you planning to do? That's why I'm here. I need to know my options. Ben leaned back in his chair. Legally, you have no obligation to pay for Olivia's education, especially now that she's 18. The money from NeuroSync is undeniably yours alone. And the mortgage I was about to take out for Princeton can be canceled before anything is finalized. I nodded, a weight lifting from my shoulders. There's something else. I found evidence that Olivia was planning to seek power of attorney over me by documenting false cognitive decline. Ben's expression hardened. That's extremely concerning and potentially fraudulent. She also rejected a full scholarship to State University without telling me, which means she deliberately chose the option that would cost you the most, Ben concluded. Exactly. What do you want, Margaret? Truly? The question caught me off guard. What did I want? Revenge? Punishment? Neither felt right. I want her to learn the lesson I failed to teach her all these years, I said finally. That actions have consequences. That relationships require honesty. That love doesn't mean being a doormat. Ben nodded thoughtfully. Then perhaps we should craft a strategy that's educational rather than punitive. For the next 2 hours, we outlined a plan. First, I would transfer the money intended for Princeton into a separate account only I could access. Next, I would cancel all credit cards Olivia used as an authorized user. Finally, with Ben's guidance, I would establish a trust fund with specific conditions Olivia would need to meet to access it. This isn't about withholding support, Ben clarified. It's about creating accountability. As I prepared to leave, Ben handed me a university brochure. One more thing to consider. It's never too late to pursue your own education, Margaret. I stared at the brochure for the local community college. I couldn't possibly. Why not? You've put your dreams on hold for decades. Maybe it's time to revisit them. After all, you've always loved literature. Those journals you've kept all these years, they show real talent. I was surprised he remembered my old habit of writing daily reflections and short stories. Robert had always encouraged my writing, but after his accident, I'd set that dream aside to focus on making ends meet and raising Olivia. When I arrived home, Olivia was waiting, a stack of Princeton housing forms on the kitchen table. "Where have you been?" she demanded. "I needed your signature on these hours ago. I had a meeting with Ben Wilson." "The lawyer? Why?" I set my purse down carefully. "I received some unexpected news today. An investment your father made years ago has finally paid off." Olivia's eyes lit up with naked greed. "How much?" "Enough to change our lives," I said carefully. "But perhaps not in the way you're thinking." "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I've had a revelation today, Olivia. About you. About me. About the relationship we've built on my blind devotion and your calculated manipulation." She froze, then quickly recovered. "Is this about what you overheard again?" "I told you we were just joking." "Stop lying," I said quietly. "I know about the scholarship you rejected. I know about the Oxford program you applied to without telling me. I know about the credit card charges and the stolen jewelry and the journal where you detailed plans to declare me mentally incompetent." The color drained from her face. "You went through my things? You had no right." "Perhaps not, but I had every reason." "So what now?" she demanded, defiance replacing shock. "You're going to punish me by not paying for Princeton? Ruin my future because I hurt your feelings?" "No," I said calmly. "I'm going to give you exactly what you need, not what you want. And what you need, Olivia, is a lesson in consequences." The confusion on her face would have been comical under different circumstances. "I don't understand." "You will," I promised. "Starting tomorrow." As I climbed the stairs, leaving her staring after me in bewilderment, I realized this was the first conversation we'd ever had where I hadn't yielded to her emotional manipulation. It felt like waking up from a very long sleep. "You're going back to school?" Olivia's voice dripped with disbelief as she stared at the community college enrollment form on the kitchen counter. "For what? It's not like you can start a career at your age." I continued making my coffee, refusing to take the bait. "I've always loved literature. Now I have the time and resources to study it properly." "This is about punishing me, isn't it?" She crossed her arms. "You're using Dad's money for yourself instead of my education." "I'm using my money to improve my life," I corrected gently. Something I should have done years ago. It had been 3 days since our confrontation, 3 days of strategic silence on my part while Olivia cycled between anger, manipulation, and desperate attempts to re-establish the status quo. She'd even made dinner last night, badly burnt lasagna, that I'd praised effusively while watching her calculate her next move. "What about Princeton?" she finally asked, the question I'd been waiting for. "I won't be paying for Princeton." The explosion was immediate. "You can't do this to me. I've already accepted. My friends all know. Do you have any idea how humiliating it would be to attend State University on a full scholarship instead?" I interrupted. "The one you rejected without telling me?" Olivia faltered. "That's different. Princeton opens doors that State never could. Then perhaps you should have been honest about your options, and we could have discussed them like adults." "This is insane," she muttered. "You're punishing me for trying to better myself." "No," I said evenly. "I'm allowing you to experience the natural consequences of dishonesty. There's a difference, so that's it? I just don't go to college?" Her voice cracked, and for a moment, I almost wavered. "You have options," I said, pulling out the folder Ben had helped me prepare. "I've contacted State University. They've agreed to reconsider your scholarship if you apply by the end of the week." Hope flickered in her eyes, quickly replaced by suspicion. "Why would you do that if you're so angry with me?" "Because despite everything, I am your mother, and I do want you to succeed." I paused. "But success built on manipulation isn't really success at all, is it?" She didn't answer, staring at the folder instead. "There's more," I continued. "I've established a trust fund for you." Her head snapped up. "A trust fund?" "With conditions," I clarified. "You'll receive a modest monthly stipend for living expenses while you attend college. The bulk of the money will become available after you've maintained full-time employment for 2 years following graduation." "2 years?" she spluttered. That's forever. It's called learning financial independence, something I should have taught you long ago." She paced the kitchen, calculations visibly running behind her eyes. "And if I refuse, then you're welcome to stay here. Contribute to household expenses and attend community college with me," I said mildly. "The choice is entirely yours." Olivia stopped pacing. "You've thought of everything, haven't you? I've had 19 years of making excuses for your behavior. It gives one plenty of time to reflect." She snatched the folder off the table. "I need to think." "Of course," I nodded. "In the meantime, I've canceled all your credit cards and transferred your car insurance to your name. The bills are in the folder." "You can't be serious." "Completely serious," I said. "Oh, and Olivia? The Princeton housing forms you needed me to sign?" I nodded toward the shredder in the corner. I thought it best to eliminate the temptation. After she stormed upstairs, I allowed myself a moment of doubt. Was I being too harsh? Too abrupt in changing the rules of our relationship? My phone rang, displaying Susan's name. "How did it go?" she asked immediately. "About as well as expected," I sighed. "She thinks I'm punishing her." "You're not," Susan said firmly. "You're finally parenting her. There's a difference." "What if she hates me for it?" "She might for a while. But Maggie, she was planning to have you declared incompetent to get your money. If that doesn't justify some tough love, I don't know what does." The doorbell interrupted our conversation. I opened it to find Daniel Matthews, my neighbor from 3 houses down, holding a stack of mail. "These were delivered to my box by mistake," he said with an apologetic smile. "I think the new carrier is still learning the route." "Thank you." "Daniel, would you like to come in for coffee?" The invitation surprised us both. In 5 years of living on the same street, our interactions had been limited to neighborly waves and brief conversations about the weather. "I'd like that," he said, after a moment's hesitation. As we settled in the kitchen, I found myself studying him properly for the first time. A professor of English literature at the community college, according to neighborhood gossip. Divorced, no children, around my age. "You seem different," he observed, accepting the coffee I offered. "Different how?" He considered his answer carefully. "More present somehow. Usually when we talk, it feels like you're halfway somewhere else." The observation was startling in its accuracy. How long had I been living that way, physically present but mentally consumed with Olivia's needs and wants? "I'm making some changes," I said simply. "Good changes, I hope?" I thought about the enrollment form on the counter, the trust documents in Ben's office, the canceled credit cards, and the shredded Princeton paperwork. "Necessary ones," I replied. From upstairs came the sound of a door slamming, followed by muffled cursing, as Olivia discovered another consequence of her actions. The home Wi-Fi password had been changed. Daniel raised an eyebrow. "My daughter is learning some difficult lessons," I explained. "Ah," he nodded. "The famous Olivia. I've seen her coming and going, but never had the pleasure of an introduction." Trust me, pleasure isn't the word I'd use right now. He laughed, and I found myself joining him, the first genuine laughter I'd experienced in days. You know, he said, glancing at the enrollment form. I teach Introduction to American Literature at the college, Tuesday and Thursday evenings. Are you recruiting potential students, Professor Matthews? Just offering information, he smiled. The class has a good mix of traditional and returning students. You might find it interesting. As he left, I realized what had been missing from our brief interaction, the constant calculation of how each word and gesture would impact someone else's emotional state. The exhausting vigilance I'd maintained for years with Olivia, talking with Daniel had been easy, natural, refreshing. I picked up the enrollment form. Decision made. Whatever happened with Olivia, whether she chose state university or community college, whether she eventually understood my actions or resented them forever, I would no longer structure my entire existence around her reactions. For the first time in decades, I was making a choice solely for myself, and it felt like breathing after years underwater. 6 weeks later, I sat in Professor Matthews's classroom, heart pounding as he returned our first analytical essays. The red A on my paper sent a thrill of accomplishment through me that I hadn't experienced in years. Excellent insights on Fitzgerald's use of symbolism. Margaret, Daniel Professor Matthews in this context, commented as he passed my desk. Your perspective on the green light was particularly refreshing. Heat rose to my cheeks at the praise. At 58, I was old enough to be the mother of most students in the class, yet here I was, blushing like a schoolgirl. Don't forget, your group presentations on Hemingway are next Tuesday, Daniel reminded the class as we packed up. Margaret, could I speak with you for a moment? I approached his desk, clutching my essay. How are things at home? He asked quietly. He knew the broad strokes of my situation with Olivia. Over coffee after that first visit, I'd found myself unexpectedly unburdening to this near stranger who listened without judgment. Tense, I admitted. She's accepted the scholarship at State, but is treating it like exile to Siberia. Every conversation becomes a referendum on how I've ruined her life. Daniel nodded sympathetically. The hardest lessons are rarely appreciated in the moment. I keep wondering if I'm being too harsh. From what you've told me, you're finally being appropriately firm after years of enabling behavior that wasn't serving either of you. His validation eased the persistent guilt I'd been carrying. Thank you. I needed to hear that. That's not why I asked you to stay, though. He smiled, suddenly seeming almost nervous. The English department is hosting a lecture series on Gothic literature next month. I wondered if you might be interested in attending. As your student? I clarified, my heart inexplicably racing. As my guest, he specified, outside of our academic relationship. Wouldn't that create a conflict of interest? I asked, genuinely concerned. Daniel nodded. I've already spoken with the department chair. If you're comfortable with it, another professor would grade your remaining assignments this semester to avoid any ethical issues. His thoughtfulness touched me. You've really considered this. I have, he admitted. I value our intellectual connection too much to compromise it with impropriety. In that case, I'd like that very much. Walking to my car, I caught my reflection in a storefront window and paused. When had I started standing straighter? When had the perpetual worry lines between my brows softened? When had I last purchased clothes for myself, not on clearance? The woman looking back at me was still recognizably Margaret Sullivan, but something fundamental had shifted, a confidence that came not from external validation, but from rediscovering my own worth. At home, Olivia sat at the kitchen table surrounded by paperwork, scowling at her laptop. State's honors housing is already full, she announced without preamble. I have to choose between the regular dorms or a shared apartment off campus. What does your budget allow for? I asked, setting down my book bag. The question clearly irritated her. Since implementing our new financial arrangement, I'd refused to solve such problems for her. The apartment would be cheaper if I find 2 roommates, she admitted reluctantly. But I don't know anyone at State. Sounds like an opportunity to meet new people, I suggested. Starting dinner preparations. Olivia watched me with narrowed eyes. You're different lately. Am I? I don't know. Less available. The observation was telling. To Olivia, my value had always been measured by my availability to meet her needs. I have my own studies to focus on, I replied. Speaking of which, I got an A- on my first essay. Good for you, she said, not entirely succeeding at hiding her sarcasm. Learning to analyze The Great Gatsby will really transform your career prospects. Rather than rise to the bait, I simply continued chopping vegetables. Actually, I've been invited to a lecture series on Gothic literature next month. Thrilling, she rolled her eyes. With Professor Matthews. Something in my tone made her look up sharply. Wait, like a date? Yes, I said simply. You're dating my literature professor? Confusion warred with disgust on her face. He's not your professor, and yes, I'm exploring the possibility. That's weird, is it? I kept my tone light. I'm a single woman enjoying intellectual conversation with a man who shares my interests. Seems perfectly normal to me. You're almost 60. 58, I corrected, which means I potentially have decades of life ahead of me. Did you expect me to spend them all alone once you left for college? She had no answer for that. The truth was, she had never considered my life beyond its utility to hers. Whatever, she finally muttered, returning to her laptop. I need to make a decision about housing by Friday. The stipend you're allowing me barely covers anything. It covers necessities, I pointed out. If you want extras, you might consider a part-time job. A job? She looked genuinely shocked. While taking a full course load? Millions of students manage it every semester. This is punishment, she declared. You're deliberately making things difficult for me. No, Olivia, I'm introducing you to reality. I set down my knife. The reality most young adults face: balancing responsibilities, making financial decisions, experiencing consequences. All because you overheard one stupid conversation. That conversation was just the catalyst, I said quietly. This is about 19 years of patterns I should have addressed long ago. Our eyes met across the kitchen, and for a brief moment, something like understanding flickered in hers. Then her phone chimed, breaking the connection. It's Tyler, she said, checking the message. He got into state, too. Says he needs a roommate. Male roommate? I raised an eyebrow. Is that wise? She rolled her eyes. Tyler's gay, Mom. But thanks for the 1950s morality check. If he's reliable and respectful, it could be a good solution, I offered, refusing to be baited. Olivia seemed thrown by my reasonable response. She'd clearly expected opposition she could rail against. I'll tell him maybe, she said cautiously, as if waiting for the catch. The doorbell rang, and Olivia answered it before I could move. Susan's voice drifted from the entryway, followed by her appearance in the kitchen doorway. Book club night, she announced, holding up a bottle of wine. I brought the Pinot you like. Book club? Olivia echoed. First Thursday of the month, I explained, wiping my hands on a towel. We're discussing Rebecca tonight. Since when do you have a book club? Since 4 weeks ago, Susan supplied cheerfully. Your mom's analysis has been eye-opening. Apparently studying literature formally gives one quite the critical perspective. The look of complete bewilderment on Olivia's face might have been comical under different circumstances. She was watching her carefully constructed image of me, the predictable, manipulable doormat, crumble in real time. I made chicken for dinner, I told her. Help yourself whenever you're hungry. We'll be in the living room. As Susan and I left the kitchen, I heard Olivia's baffled murmur, "Who are you?" The question echoed in my mind as I greeted the 3 other women in our newly formed book club. Who was I, now that I was becoming the person I might have been all along, if I hadn't lost myself in the consuming role of Olivia's mother? I was still discovering the answer, one day at a time, and for the first time in decades, the uncertainty felt exhilarating rather than terrifying. You're not even listening to me, Olivia's voice escalated, filling the kitchen with her frustration. I heard every word, I replied calmly, looking up from my textbook. You don't want to attend State's orientation because it conflicts with Brooke Henderson's Hamptons weekend. I simply asked if missing the official welcome events was wise. This isn't about orientation. This is about you controlling every aspect of my life now. I closed my book. No, Olivia. This is about you facing the reality that actions have consequences. You rejected a scholarship without consulting me, lied about other opportunities, and deliberately misled me about your intentions. Now you're living with the results of those choices. It was one stupid conversation, she shouted. One time I vented to my friends and you've completely overreacted. Is that what you think this is about? One conversation? What else? I took a deep breath. It's time we had complete honesty between us. Follow me. Curiosity temporarily overriding defiance, She followed me to my home office. I unlocked the bottom drawer of my desk and removed a thick folder. "What's that?" "Evidence," I said, laying out the contents on my desk. Bank statements showing unauthorized charges on my credit cards. Photographs of jewelry you claimed was stolen that I found hidden in your closet. Printouts of social media posts where you ridiculed me to your friends. Your journal entries describing plans to have me declared mentally incompetent. She stared at the damning collection, color draining from her face. "This isn't about one conversation, Olivia. It's about a pattern of deception and manipulation that I enabled for years." "You went through my private things," she whispered, unable to muster her usual indignation in the face of such overwhelming evidence. "Yes," I acknowledged. "After 19 years of respecting boundaries, you consistently violated." "So what now?" she demanded, anger returning. "You've got your file of evidence. Are you throwing me out? Disowning me?" "No," I said gently. "I'm giving you the gift I should have given you years ago, the chance to become a responsible, ethical adult. By controlling my money? By forcing me to go to state instead of Princeton? That's your idea of a gift? By allowing you to experience natural consequences rather than shielding you from them," I corrected. "Princeton was never your right. It was a privilege you hadn't earned." "Hadn't earned?" she scoffed. "I had the grades. I got accepted. And you lied about your alternatives, manipulated me into financial arrangements that would have crippled my future, and showed contempt for the very person you expected to fund your ambitions." I gathered the papers back into the folder. "That's not earning anything, Olivia. That's exploiting someone's love for you." She fell silent, a flicker of something like shame crossing her features before hardening into resentment. "So that's it? We're done? You've made your point?" "We're not done. We're just beginning a new chapter." I handed her an envelope. "This came for you today, from State." She opened it reluctantly, scanning the contents. "They want me to apply for their honors literature program," she said, confusion evident. "But I'm pre-law. They were impressed by your essay. Professor Winters, the department chair, thought you showed particular promise in literary analysis." "How would he even see my application essay?" I hesitated. "I may have shown it to Professor Matthews, who shared it with colleagues. He thought your writing was exceptional." "You did what?" Her indignation was immediate. "That was private. It was a college application essay, Olivia, not a diary entry. And it's resulted in an opportunity you wouldn't have had otherwise. An opportunity I don't want. I'm pre-law, not some English major." "Then decline," I said simply. "But consider why you're so set on law. Is it because you're passionate about it, or because it fits the narrative you've constructed about your future?" She stared at me, momentarily speechless. It was perhaps the first time I'd directly challenged the carefully curated image she'd built of herself. "You don't know me at all," she finally said. "I know you better than you think," I countered. "I know you've been writing short stories since you were 12, stories you hide in a folder labeled Calc Notes on your laptop. I know you spend hours analyzing film adaptations of classic novels, but tell everyone you're watching for the costumes. I know you light up when discussing character motivations, but force yourself to sound equally enthusiastic about constitutional law." Her expression shifted from defiance to vulnerability so quickly it stole my breath. For a brief moment, my actual daughter, not the calculated persona she'd perfected, looked back at me. "When did you figure all that out?" she asked quietly. "I've always seen you, Olivia, even when you thought I was blind to everything but my own need for your approval." She swallowed hard. "It doesn't matter anyway. Literature doesn't pay the bills. Neither does an undergraduate degree in political science," I pointed out. "Law school comes after, regardless of your major." She fingered the invitation, conflict evident in her expression. "I'd still be stuck at State, where you'd have a chance to define yourself on your own terms, not through the prestige of an institution." "Is that what you're doing? Redefining yourself?" The question held no sarcasm for once. "I'm rediscovering the person I set aside to become what I thought you needed," I corrected. "There's a difference. And if I refuse your terms, if I try to find another way to Princeton, that's your choice. But my terms regarding financial support won't change." She crumpled the honors program invitation in her fist. "This isn't fair." "It's perfectly fair," I said quietly. "It's simply not what you wanted." "I hate this," she whispered, and for the first time in our confrontation, I glimpsed genuine emotion rather than tactical display. "I hate feeling trapped. That's not a pleasant feeling, is it? Now imagine how I felt when I discovered your plans to have me declared incompetent so you could access my assets." She flinched as if physically struck. "I should never have written that down," she muttered. "The problem isn't that you wrote it down, Olivia. The problem is that you thought it at all." She paced the small office, agitation evident in every movement. "So what am I supposed to do now? Just surrender? Accept defeat?" "This isn't a battle," I said. "It's a crossroads. You can continue fighting against consequences or learn from them. You can cling to a version of your life that requires manipulating others, or you can begin building something authentic." Easy for you to say. You suddenly have Dad's money and your perfect professor boyfriend and your cute little book club. You get to reinvent yourself while I'm stuck with the fallout. The fallout of your own choices, I reminded her gently. And yes, I do have new opportunities. Because for the first time in decades, I'm choosing myself rather than subordinating my needs to yours. She stared at me for a long moment, searching my face for some sign of wavering. Finding none, she snatched the honors program invitation from where she'd discarded it. "Fine," she said, her voice tight. "I'll consider it. Not because you want me to, but because having English Lit as a minor might distinguish my law school applications." It was a small concession wrapped in rationalization classic Olivia, but it was more than I'd expected. "That's a practical perspective," I acknowledged. She turned to leave, then paused at the doorway. "Does it make you happy, seeing me like this?" The question caught me off guard. "Like what?" "Powerless, at your mercy." "No, Olivia. It breaks my heart." I met her gaze squarely. "But watching you continue on your previous path would break it more completely." Something in my tone must have reached her, because she looked away first. "I have to call Tyler about the apartment," she muttered, disappearing down the hallway. After she left, I sat motionless, emotionally drained from the confrontation. The folder of evidence remained on my desk, physical proof of years of manipulation and deceit. Yet alongside the anger and disappointment it represented, I found myself wondering what I might have done differently. My phone chimed with a text from Daniel. "Still on for coffee tomorrow?" The simple message brought a smile to my face. Whatever uncertainty lay ahead with Olivia, I was no longer navigating it while neglecting my own needs and happiness. That, at least, was progress. The August heat was stifling as I helped Olivia carry the last box up 3 flights of stairs to her apartment near State University's campus. Tyler, her gay roommate, had already arranged the common areas with surprising design sense. "That's everything," I said, setting the box labeled books on her bare mattress. Olivia surveyed her new bedroom, roughly half the size of her room at home, with beige walls and a view of the parking lot. "It's depressing," she declared. "It's a blank canvas," I countered. "And it's yours to design however you want, within your budget." She gave me a sideways glance. "That's your solution to everything now, isn't it? Within your budget." "Financial independence is part of adulthood," I said, refusing to be baited. "Something most people learn much earlier than 19. Tyler appeared in the doorway, his slender frame leaning against the frame. "My parents made me get a job at 16, he offered. "Best thing they ever did for me. I appreciate everything so much more when I have to work for it." Olivia shot him a betrayed look. "Whose side are you on?" "Team Reality," he grinned. "The coffee shop where I work is hiring, by the way. Employee discount on caffeine essential for surviving freshman year." After he disappeared back to the living room, Olivia muttered, "I can't believe I agreed to live with someone who thinks minimum wage jobs build character." "He seems grounded," I observed. "A good influence, perhaps. He's the only person from high school who would still talk to me after—" She trailed off, not meeting my eyes. "After your circumstances changed," I finished for her. "After everyone found out I got downgraded from Princeton to State," she corrected bitterly. "Brooke made sure everyone knew. Friendship based on status is rarely lasting." "Thanks for the fortune cookie wisdom," she snapped, then immediately looked away. "Sorry, I'm just stressed." The apology, however reluctant, was notable a small crack in her defensive armor. "Understandable," I acknowledged. "Change is difficult." We finished unpacking in companionable silence. When everything was in place, we stood awkwardly in the center of her room, the moment of farewell looming. "So," Olivia said, fiddling with her sleeve, "I guess this is it." "I'm only 40 minutes away," I reminded her. "But yes, this is the beginning of your independent life." She nodded, her expression unreadable. "When does your fall semester start?" "Next week. I'm taking 3 classes this time." "Ambitious?" she said. with only a hint of sarcasm. I'm enjoying the challenge more than I expected. Another awkward silence fell between us. So much remained unresolved, yet neither of us seemed ready to bridge the deeper divides. Well, I finally said, reaching for my purse. I should get going. Let you settle in. Wait, she blurted, then hesitated. I wanted to ask. Yes? She took a deep breath. The trust fund, is it really there? Or was that just something you said to make me cooperate? The question revealed so much about how she viewed me as someone potentially capable of the same manipulation she had employed. It exists, I said firmly. The terms are exactly as I explained. You'll receive the monthly stipend we agreed on while you're in school. The full amount becomes accessible after 2 years of post-graduation employment. Relief flickered across her features before she masked it. And if I wanted to switch to the literature program instead of pre-law, would that violate the terms? The question caught me by surprise. No, it wouldn't. The terms are based on attendance and completion, not specific majors. She nodded, as if confirming something to herself. Good to know. Are you considering it? Maybe, she admitted reluctantly. Professor Winters called personally yesterday, said my application essay showed remarkable insight into Austen's use of irony. That's quite a compliment from the department chair. It would still be state, not Princeton, she pointed out, as if testing my reaction. The quality of education depends far more on the student's engagement than the institution's prestige, I said, something I've learned firsthand these past months. Tyler appeared again, this time holding car keys. Sorry to interrupt, Mrs. Sullivan, but we've got that department mixer in an hour, and I still need to shower. Department mixer? I echoed, looking at Olivia. For the literature program, she explained, not meeting my eyes. I haven't decided anything. I'm just exploring options. Of course, I nodded, hiding my surprise. That seems wise. Another silence fell, more charged than the last. 3 months ago, I would have filled it with reassurances and offers of help. Now, I simply waited, allowing Olivia to navigate the moment on her own terms. I should go, I finally said, moving toward the door. Mom, she called, stopping me. The word sounded different somehow, less a title of convenience and more an acknowledgement of relationship. Thank you for helping with the move. You're welcome, I replied simply. As I drove home, emotions swirled through me, pride in Olivia's small steps toward authenticity, grief for the years of manipulation, hope for genuine change, and lingering fear that I was somehow failing her by enforcing boundaries. My phone rang through the car's speaker system. Daniel calling, the automated voice announced. Hi, I answered, his name bringing an involuntary smile to my face. How did the move go? His voice was warm with genuine interest. Better than expected, I admitted. She's considering switching to the literature program. That's significant, he observed. Her choice? Apparently, though I'm sure she'd deny I had any influence. He laughed. Progress doesn't always announce itself with fanfare. No, I agreed. Sometimes it whispers through the cracks of resistance. Poetic. You're becoming quite the literature student. I have an excellent professor, I teased. Speaking of which, his tone shifted slightly. I wanted to talk to you about the Gothic Literature Lecture Series. There's been a change of venue. Oh? My colleague Professor Abernathy offered his lake house for the weekend. It would mean staying overnight. Several of the faculty are bringing partners. The implication hung in the air between us. We'd been seeing each other regularly for nearly 3 months now, but always in public settings, coffee shops, restaurants, campus events. This would be a significant shift in our relationship. That sounds lovely, I said, surprised by my lack of hesitation. Really? Relief colored his voice. I wasn't sure if it would seem too presumptuous. Daniel, I'm 58, not 18. I think I can handle a weekend away without requiring a permission slip. His laugh was delighted. You've changed so much since we first started talking, Margaret. It's like watching someone step into the light after being in shadow. The observation resonated deeply. I had been living in the shadow of Olivia's needs and manipulations for so long that I'd forgotten how it felt to stand in my own light. 3 months into the fall semester, I sat in the university auditorium watching Olivia step up to the podium. As one of 2 freshmen selected to present at the literature department's undergraduate symposium, she looked both terrified and exhilarated. Good afternoon, she began, her voice wavering slightly before finding its strength. My paper explores the parallels between economic dependency and emotional manipulation in Jane Austen's Mansfield Park and Charlotte Perkins Gilman's The Yellow Wallpaper. Pride swelled in my chest as she articulated her analysis with growing confidence. Something about her seemed different, not just her appearance, though she'd abandoned her expensive highlights and designer clothes for a simpler style, but something in her bearing. There was an authenticity to her enthusiasm that I hadn't witnessed in years. Tyler sat beside me, occasionally snapping photos for what he called the roommate archives. In the 3 months they'd lived together, he'd become an unexpected ally in Olivia's transformation. His no-nonsense approach, cutting through her manipulative tactics with disarming humor. "She's actually good at this," he whispered, as Olivia fielded questions from faculty members. Like, genuinely good, not just faking it to impress people good. "Yes," I agreed. "I think she is." After the symposium, we waited in the lobby as Olivia accepted congratulations from professors and fellow students. When she finally approached us, her cheeks were flushed with genuine pleasure. "Professor Winters wants me to expand my paper for the regional conference in spring," she announced, barely containing her excitement. "That's wonderful," I said, resisting the urge to hug her. Our relationship remained tentative, the old patterns too easily triggered by physical proximity. "The department's hosting a dinner for the presenters," she continued, "so I can't do coffee like we planned." "Of course," I nodded. "This is a significant achievement. You should celebrate." She hesitated, shifting her weight from one foot to the other. "You could come," she offered tentatively. "To the dinner, if you want." Professor Winters said presenters could bring guests. The invitation caught me off guard. In the months since she'd started at State, our interactions had been limited to occasional coffee meetups and brief phone calls, civil but guarded, with unspoken tensions hovering beneath surface conversations. "I'd like that," I said simply. Tyler cleared his throat dramatically. "And what about the loyal roommate who's endured endless practice presentations and stress-induced kitchen messes?" Olivia rolled her eyes, but with affection rather than disdain. "Yes, Tyler, you're invited too, though I'm not sure academia is ready for your commentary." "Honey, academia needs my commentary," he retorted, linking his arm with hers. "Now, I believe you promised that if this went well, we'd finally replace that tragic futon with a real couch?" "I said we'd discuss it," she corrected, but she was smiling. As they continued their good-natured bickering, I observed with quiet amazement how differently Olivia interacted with Tyler compared to her high school friends. There was no calculation in her responses, no careful management of her image, just the natural rhythm of genuine friendship. The department dinner proved equally revealing. Seated at a round table with Olivia, Tyler, and several faculty members, I watched my daughter engage in earnest academic discussion, her perspectives thoughtful rather than performative. When Professor Winters inquired about her pre-law background, she answered with unexpected candor. "I was never actually interested in law," she admitted. "It just seemed prestigious and guaranteed to impress people." "And literature doesn't?" he asked with a raised eyebrow. "Not in the same way," she shrugged. "But I'm finding I care less about impressing people these days." Her eyes flickered to me as she spoke, a moment of silent acknowledgement passing between us. Later, as Tyler engaged the professors in a spirited debate about film adaptations, Olivia leaned toward me. "I ran into Brooke Henderson yesterday," she said quietly. "How was that?" "Weird." She traced the rim of her water glass. She was all fake nice, asking about State with this poor you expression. Then she started talking about all the amazing connections she's making at Princeton. "And how did that make you feel?" I asked carefully. Olivia considered the question seriously. "6 months ago, it would have devastated me," she admitted. "But yesterday I just felt sorry for her. All she talked about was who she knows and which exclusive events she's been invited to. Nothing about what she's learning or what interests her." That's an insightful observation. I kept thinking about something Tyler said when I first moved in. He told me, "Princeton would have given you a great network, but State is giving you a self." She shook her head. It sounded like greeting card nonsense at the time, but now I think he might be right. The admission, so quietly offered, signified more progress than any academic achievement. "Tyler seems wise beyond his years," I observed. "Don't tell him that," she groaned. "His ego is unbearable enough already." We shared a small laugh, perhaps our first genuine moment of connection in months. "Mom," she said hesitantly. There's something else I wanted to tell you. Yes? I've been seeing someone from the counseling center. A therapist. The words came out in a rush. Tyler thought it might help with, everything. That's a courageous step, I said carefully, hiding my surprise. We've been talking about attachment issues and adoption trauma. She avoided my gaze. Dr. Mercer thinks some of my behaviors might stem from early childhood experiences of abandonment. That seems plausible, I acknowledged. It's not an excuse, she added quickly, for how I treated you. She's very clear about that, but it helps me understand some of the patterns. Understanding is the first step toward change. She nodded, fidgeting with her napkin. There's something else, something I've never told you. I waited, giving her space to continue at her own pace. When I was 14, I found those letters from the adoption agency, she said, her voice dropping to near whisper. The ones that mentioned I'd been returned by 3 previous families. My heart clenched. Olivia. I only saw fragments enough to piece together that I wasn't anyone's first choice, or second, or third. She swallowed hard. I convinced myself you only kept me because you were desperate and had no better options. That wasn't true, I said gently. I chose you specifically, Olivia. Your file was the only one I requested to see. Surprise flickered across her face. Why? The question transported me back 19 years, to the small office where I'd first seen her photograph, a solemn-eyed child with defensive posture and wary expression. Because the social worker described you as challenging but brilliant. Because your eyes held questions I wanted to help answer. Because when every other prospective parent saw problems, I saw potential. She blinked rapidly, emotion breaking through her carefully maintained composure. I've been awful to you, she whispered. At times, I agreed, not sugarcoating the truth. And I enabled behaviors I should have addressed years ago. We both have healing to do. Tyler's laugh drew our attention back to the wider table conversation, providing a welcome respite from the intensity of our exchange. Olivia discreetly wiped her eyes before rejoining the discussion, her academic persona slipping back into place like a comfortable garment rather than a deceptive mask. As I drove home later that evening, I realized something profound had shifted between us. Not forgiveness that would require more time and conversation, but understanding. A tentative bridge spanning the chasm of hurt and deception that had defined our relationship for too long. My phone beeped with a text message at a stoplight. I expected Daniel, who was attending a conference in Chicago, but instead saw Olivia's name. Thank you for coming tonight. It meant more than I can say. Simple words that would have seemed insignificant months ago now carried the weight of genuine emotion. And for the first time in years, I allowed myself to hope that perhaps, beneath the layers of manipulation and calculation, my daughter was finding her authentic self at last. I still can't believe you're making me do this, Olivia muttered as we walked across the crowded hotel lobby. I'm not making you do anything, I reminded her. I merely suggested it might be healing. You agreed. Momentary insanity, she grumbled, but there was no real heat in her complaint. The Celebrating Women in Literature benefit had been Daniel's suggestion, a prestigious annual event that brought together academics, publishers, and literary figures from across the region. This year's gathering held special significance for me. My recently published collection of personal essays was among those selected for recognition. There she is, Daniel said warmly, appearing at my side. The woman of the hour. Hardly, I demurred, though pleasure at his pride warmed me through. I'm just one of 20 authors being acknowledged, the only first-time author, he corrected, placing a gentle kiss on my cheek. That makes you special. Olivia watched our interaction with a slightly bemused expression. Though she'd gradually accepted Daniel's place in my life over the past year, she still seemed surprised by outward displays of affection between us. Professor Matthews, she acknowledged with a nod that was almost respectful. Olivia, he returned with a smile, your mother tells me your research paper was accepted for publication in the undergraduate journal. Congratulations. She couldn't quite hide her pride. It's not a big deal. Publishing as a sophomore is absolutely a big deal, he countered, especially in a peer-reviewed journal. Before she could respond, a familiar voice called my name. I turned to see Susan approaching, elegant in a navy dress I'd helped her select for the occasion. There's my literary star, she beamed, embracing me tightly. I've already told everyone at my table that I knew you when you were just a harried mom with a secret notebook of stories. Hardly a star, I protested. But thank you for coming. As we settled in, I scanned the room out of habit, noting the elegant decorations and diverse attendees. My gaze stopped abruptly on a familiar face 3 tables away. Brooke Henderson sat with her parents, her expression sour as her mother chatted animatedly with tablemates. When she noticed my gaze, her eyes widened in recognition before she deliberately looked away. Olivia followed my line of sight. "Great," she muttered. "The Henderson family is here." "Mrs. Henderson serves on the Literary Foundation's board," Daniel explained. "Political appointment, she gives large donations, but has limited interest in actual literature." "That tracks," Olivia said dryly. Throughout dinner, I caught Brooke stealing glances at our table, her curiosity evident despite her affected disinterest. When the awards portion of the evening began, she leaned forward attentively as the foundation director announced each honored author. "Our next recognition goes to a remarkable new voice in personal essay," the director announced. "Margaret Sullivan's collection, Second Chapters, chronicles her journey from devoted single mother to rediscovering her own identity in middle age. Please welcome Margaret to receive her award." The applause that accompanied my walk to the stage was surreal acknowledgement from literary peers for words I'd hidden in private notebooks for decades. "Thank you," I said simply when handed the elegant crystal award. For most of my adult life, I defined myself through one primary role model. It was only when that role was challenged that I discovered the person who existed beyond it. Second Chapters is dedicated to anyone who has ever wondered if it's too late to reimagine their story. It never is. The brief speech earned warm applause as I returned to our table. Daniel squeezed my hand, his pride palpable, while Susan discreetly wiped tears. Olivia's reaction surprised me, most genuine admiration, mixed with something that looked almost like regret. "Congratulations," she said quietly. "It's really good, Mom. The book, I mean it." The acknowledgement from the daughter who'd once mocked my intelligence was perhaps more meaningful than the award itself. As the ceremony concluded and guests began to mingle, Mrs. Henderson approached our table, Brooke reluctantly in tow. "Margaret Sullivan," she exclaimed with practiced charm, "your essay collection was simply marvelous, so raw and honest about the sacrifices of motherhood." "Thank you," I replied politely. "And Olivia," her gaze shifted to my daughter. "Brooke tells me you're at State now. How nice." The slight pause conveyed volumes about her assessment of State compared to Princeton. "It's been transformative," Olivia replied with unexpected poise. "The literature program is exceptional." "Literature?" Mrs. Henderson's perfectly shaped eyebrows rose. "I thought you were pre-law." "I discovered my actual passion rather than following a prescribed path," Olivia said, her voice steady. "State's program has given me opportunities I wouldn't have found elsewhere." Brooke's expression soured further. "Like what?" "Publishing research as a sophomore, for one," Daniel interjected smoothly. "Olivia's analysis of economic dependency in classic literature has received considerable attention." "How fascinating," Mrs. Henderson replied with the automatic response of someone who found it anything but. "Well, we should circulate. Lovely to see you all doing so." "Well." As they departed, Olivia released a breath. "That was satisfying," Susan supplied with a grin. "I was going to say weird," Olivia admitted. "A year ago, I would have been devastated by her condescension. Now, it just seems sad." "Progress," Daniel noted. The evening continued with introductions to publishers, academics, and fellow writers, a world I'd never imagined myself occupying. Through it all, Olivia remained by my side, observing with quiet interest rather than the resentment I might have expected from her former self. As the event wound down, we found ourselves in a quiet corner of the lobby, waiting for the valet to bring our cars. "Thank you for coming tonight," I told Olivia. "It meant a lot to have you here." She shrugged, but the gesture lacked its former dismissiveness. "It was interesting, seeing you in this world. You seem different." "Different how?" "I don't know. More solid somehow, like you're fully present in your skin." She looked away. "It's strange, realizing your parent is an actual person with their own life and interests." The observation revealed just how far she'd come from the self-centered teenager who'd seen me only as an extension of her needs. "It's part of growing up," I said gently, recognizing that parents are people too. "I guess," she hesitated. "Would you have found this path if things hadn't changed between us?" The question was perceptive and surprisingly self-aware. "I don't know," I answered honestly. Sometimes it takes a seismic disruption to reveal new possibilities. She nodded slowly. I'm sorry it had to happen that way. The apology, simple but sincere, hung between us, neither fully sufficient nor entirely necessary. We both understood that our journey had been complex, the fault lines running in both directions. We're here now, I said finally, both finding our paths. Daniel and Susan joined us as the valet arrived with our cars. Goodbyes were exchanged, plans made for Susan's upcoming birthday dinner. As Olivia prepared to leave in her modest used car, purchased with her earnings from the coffee shop job she'd initially resisted, she paused. I'm proud of you, Mom, she said quietly, for the book, for everything. The words so unexpected from the daughter who'd once dismissed me as intellectually inferior brought tears to my eyes. I'm proud of you too, I replied, more than you know. Driving home with Daniel, I reflected on the evening's significance, not just the professional recognition, but the public affirmation of the changes both Olivia and I had undergone. You're quiet, Daniel observed, reaching for my hand. Just thinking about how much has changed in 2 years, I said. For both of us. For the better? I considered the question carefully. Yes, despite the pain, despite the difficult conversations and adjustments, undeniably for the better. The email arrived on an ordinary Tuesday morning, nestled between a faculty newsletter and a reminder about Daniel's upcoming birthday. From Olivia Sullivan. Subject, can we talk? Mom, I've been working through some difficult material in therapy lately, and Dr. Mercer suggested it might be helpful to have a structured conversation with you. If you're willing, I'd like to come home this weekend. Just us, no Daniel, no Tyler, no distractions. There are things I need to say properly and questions I need to ask. I understand if this is too much or if you need time to consider. Olivia. The formal tone, so unlike our recent text exchanges, sent a ripple of apprehension through me. After nearly 2 years of gradual rebuilding, our relationship had reached a place of cautious stability. We spoke regularly, shared occasional meals, celebrated holidays together. The raw wounds had scabbed over, if not fully healed. What difficult material could prompt this request for a formal conversation? After consideration, I replied simply, I'll be here. Saturday works best. The intervening days passed with mounting tension. I found myself distracted during classes, my thoughts repeatedly returning to Olivia's cryptic message. By Saturday morning, I'd cycled through dozens of possibilities from reconciliation to renewed conflict. Olivia arrived precisely at noon, her expression inscrutable as she declined my offer of lunch. I'd rather just talk first, she said, setting a leather-bound notebook on the coffee table. If that's okay. We settled in the living room, the familiar setting suddenly feeling formal. So, I began when she remained silent. You wanted to talk. Olivia nodded, visibly gathering her courage. Dr. Mercer and I have been focusing on something called radical honesty in our sessions. It's challenging, I can imagine. Part of the process involves acknowledging harm I've caused and taking full responsibility without deflection. She opened the notebook, revealing pages of handwritten notes. I've spent months writing this all down, trying to be completely honest about my behavior toward you. My breath caught. This was not what I'd expected. You don't have to. I do, she interrupted gently. For me, as much as for you. She took a deep breath and began reading from her notebook. Mom, for most of my life, I manipulated, deceived, and emotionally exploited you. I used your love as a weapon against you. I deliberately made you feel intellectually inferior to boost my own ego. I lied about trivial matters and significant ones. I stole from you not just objects and money, but opportunities and peace of mind. Her voice remained steady despite the damning self-assessment. I sabotaged your friendships out of jealousy. I ridiculed you behind your back while accepting your sacrifices. I made you feel that you were lucky to have me in your life, when the truth was exactly the opposite. When I discovered an opportunity to attend Oxford, I hid it because I didn't want you to benefit from it. When I received a full scholarship to state, I rejected it because I wanted you to suffer financially for my prestige. Each admission felt like opening a wound I'd thought healed, yet somehow the pain was cleansing rather than destructive. Most unforgivably, she continued, I actively planned to have you declared mentally incompetent so I could control your assets. This wasn't a momentary lapse or a teenage whim, it was a calculated, sustained effort to strip you of your autonomy. She looked up from her notes, meeting my gaze directly. I hurt you deliberately and repeatedly. I can't undo that harm, but I can acknowledge it without excuses or deflection. I am profoundly sorry, Mom, not just for what I did, but for who I chose to be. The silence that followed felt charged with 2 decades of complicated emotions. That couldn't have been easy to say, I finally managed. It wasn't, she admitted. But it's been even harder living with the knowledge of who I was, who I still am in some ways, though I'm trying to change. You have changed, I said softly. I've witnessed it. Parts of me have, she acknowledged, but the core patterns, they're deeply ingrained. Dr. Mercer says they likely stem from attachment trauma during my first years of life, before you adopted me. She hesitated, then asked the question that seemed to be the real purpose of her visit. Did you know about my background before the adoption? I considered my answer carefully. I knew you'd been in multiple foster placements and that previous adoptions hadn't worked out. I was told you had adjustment difficulties due to early trauma. But not the specifics? No, those were sealed by the agency. She nodded, absorbing this. I've been trying to access my early records through legal channels. Dr. Mercer thinks understanding exactly what happened in those first 3 years might help me process some of the attachment issues. And have you been successful? Partially. I've learned I was removed from my birth mother at 13 months due to severe neglect. After that, there were 7 foster placements and 3 failed adoption attempts before you. She swallowed hard. No wonder I have trust issues. Olivia, I said gently, nothing in your early childhood justifies how you treated me. Explains, perhaps, but doesn't excuse. I know, she said quickly. That's what Dr. Mercer emphasizes. Understanding the origins of my behavior doesn't absolve me of responsibility for it. She paused. There's something else I need to ask you, and it's going to sound terrible. Go ahead. Did you ever regret adopting me? The question emerged barely above a whisper. The honesty of the moment demanded nothing less than complete truth. There were moments, I admitted. Brief moments during the worst of your manipulation when I wondered if I'd made a mistake, not because of who you were, but because I feared I lacked the skills to give you what you needed. She nodded, accepting this difficult truth. And now? Now I understand that we've both been on necessary journeys. My enabling wasn't helping you become the person you could be, just as your manipulation wasn't allowing me to become the person I needed to be. We were locked in a destructive pattern, she summarized. Yes, one that perhaps began long before either of us recognized it. Olivia closed her notebook. There's one more thing I want to tell you. I've been offered a semester abroad at Oxford, the program I originally hid from you. That's wonderful, I said sincerely. When would you go? Next spring. It's fully funded through a departmental scholarship. You should absolutely accept. She shook her head slightly. 2 years ago, I wanted Oxford as an escape away to reinvent myself where no one knew me. Now I'm considering it for the actual academic opportunity. That's significant growth, I observed. There's another option too, she continued. Professor Winters has offered me a research assistant position for his book project. It would mean staying at State, but potentially getting published as a co-author. Both sound like excellent opportunities. The old Olivia would have chosen Oxford for the prestige, she said thoughtfully. I'm trying to make this decision based on what actually serves my growth, not my ego. That's all any of us can do, I said. Make the best decisions with the understanding we have at the time. We moved to the kitchen after that, the formal atmosphere of the living room no longer necessary. As I prepared a simple lunch, our conversation shifted to lighter topics: her classes, my writing projects, Daniel's sabbatical plans. Yet underlying the ordinary exchange was a new foundation, one built on mutual respect rather than manipulation and enabling. Tyler wants to know if you and Daniel would join us for dinner next Friday, she mentioned as she helped wash dishes. He's testing recipes for his culinary school application. We'd love to, I replied. How's he feeling about the career change? Terrified, but excited, kind of how I felt switching from pre-law to literature. The casual reference to her own transformation struck me how naturally she now acknowledged her growth. As she prepared to leave later that afternoon, Olivia paused at the front door. Thank you for listening today, for not minimizing what I did but not holding it against me either. That's what healing looks like, I said. Not forgetting, but not being defined by the past either. She nodded, then hesitated before asking, Are you happy, Mom? With your life now? The question, so different from the self-centered queries of her former self, touched me deeply. Yes, I answered truthfully. Not in the way I imagined happiness would look at this stage of my life, but genuinely, deeply happy. Good, she said simply. You deserve it. As I watched her drive away, I reflected on our journey, the painful awakening, the difficult boundaries, the gradual rebuilding. We would never have the simple mother-daughter relationship I'd once idealized, but perhaps we had something more valuable, an authentic connection between two imperfect people committed to growth. And in the end, isn't that what family truly means? 4 years later, I stood in the crowded university auditorium, watching Olivia adjust her graduation cap. At 23, she carried herself with a confidence that came from accomplishment rather than arrogance, a subtle but profound difference. "Stop fussing, Mom," she laughed as I straightened her honors cords. "It's just a ceremony." "It's not just anything," I corrected gently. "It's the culmination of 4 years of genuine work and growth." Daniel watched our interaction with a fond smile, camera ready to capture the moment. At my side, Tyler, now a culinary school graduate and junior chef at one of the city's upscale restaurants, made final adjustments to the boutonnierie he'd insisted on creating for Olivia's graduation gown. "Literature department's most outstanding senior award winner deserves proper floral recognition," he declared, stepping back to admire his handiwork. The announcement of Olivia's departmental honor had come as no surprise to those who'd witnessed her transformation from calculating pre-law student to passionate literary scholar. Her thesis on economic power dynamics in 19th century women's literature had already been accepted for publication in a respected academic journal. "There's Professor Winters," Olivia noted, waving to the department chair who'd become her academic mentor. "He wants me to meet the visiting professor from Columbia before the ceremony starts." As she made her way through the crowd, I marveled at the natural ease with which she now navigated academic spaces, not as performance or strategy, but as genuine engagement. "Penny for your thoughts," Daniel said, slipping his arm around my waist. "Just reflecting on how far we've come," I replied. All of us. My own journey had unfolded alongside Olivia's. The essay collection that had brought unexpected recognition 3 years ago had led to a teaching position at the community college, then a book contract for a work exploring late-life reinvention. At 62, I'd found my voice as both writer and educator roles I'd never imagined in my former life. Daniel and I had married in a small ceremony last year, blending our lives with the comfortable familiarity of people who'd found partnership in middle age. The ring on my finger still occasionally surprised me, a symbol of a chapter I'd thought permanently closed after Robert's accident. "Mrs. Matthews?" I turned to find Brooke Henderson approaching, her expression uncharacteristically hesitant. We hadn't spoken since the literary benefit 3 years earlier. "Ms. Henderson," I acknowledged with polite surprise. "Are you here for the graduation?" "My cousin is receiving her master's," she explained. "I saw you across the room and, well, I wanted to say hello." An awkward silence fell between us, years of unspoken history hanging in the air. "How is Princeton?" Daniel asked diplomatically. "I actually transferred after sophomore year," she admitted, "to NYU. Princeton wasn't what I expected." The revelation surprised me. "I hope you found what you were looking for at NYU." "I did. Eventually." She glanced toward where Olivia stood chatting animatedly with faculty members. "Olivia seems to have thrived here." "She found her path," I agreed. Brooke nodded, something like regret crossing her features. "I should have been a better friend to her." "To both of you, really." The simple acknowledgement was unexpected. "We all make mistakes in our youth," I offered, not unkindly. "Some more than others," she said ruefully. "Anyway, I just wanted to say congratulations. To Olivia on her graduation, and to you on your new book. My mother has it on her nightstand." After she departed, Daniel squeezed my hand. "That was generous of you." "Life's too short for holding grudges," I replied, "especially when people show genuine change." The ceremony itself was a blur of speeches, name-calling, and applause. When Olivia crossed the stage to receive her diploma, the pride that swelled in my chest was untainted by calculation or comparison, simply joy in her genuine achievement. Afterward, amid the chaos of graduates and families, she found us with a beaming smile. "Official college graduate," she announced, brandishing her diploma. "Now I just have to decide between the master's programs." Her academic success had translated into multiple graduate school offers, a choice she was approaching with thoughtful consideration rather than status seeking. "You'll make the right decision," I assured her. "You always do nowadays." "High praise from the woman who once called me pathologically manipulative," she teased, the old wound now healed enough for gentle humor. "I never used those exact words," I protested. "Close enough," she laughed. Our celebratory dinner that evening brought together the small circle that had become our unconventional family, Daniel and me, Olivia and her boyfriend, Michael, a thoughtful history student she'd met through the honors program, Tyler and his partner, James, and Susan with her new husband, Paolo. As conversation flowed around the table, I found myself observing rather than participating, struck by the natural authenticity of our interactions. There was no performance here, no calculated impressions or strategic posturing, just genuine connection among people who had chosen to be in each other's lives. Later, as dessert plates were cleared, Olivia clinked her glass for attention. "I have an announcement," she said, her expression both nervous and excited. "I've made my decision about graduate school." All eyes turned to her expectantly. "I've accepted the fellowship at the University of Michigan," she revealed. "Their interdisciplinary program in literature and social justice is exactly what I want to pursue." "That's wonderful news," I said sincerely, even as I calculated the distance, a 4-hour drive that would take her farther from home than she'd been since starting college. "There's more," she continued. "Part of why I chose Michigan is because they've offered Mom a visiting professorship in their creative writing program for the fall semester." Stunned silence met this revelation. "They what?" I finally managed. "I might have sent them your collected essays and mentioned you were working on a new book," Olivia admitted with a mischievous smile. "Dr. Abernathy there was impressed and reached out to the department chair. The official offer should arrive by email tomorrow." "You did this?" I asked, overwhelmed by the thoughtfulness behind the gesture. "It's entirely on your merit," she assured me. "I just made the introduction. The rest was all you." "But what about Daniel? My classes here?" My mind raced through practical considerations. "It's just 1 semester," Daniel interjected, and I realized from his lack of surprise that he'd been in on the secret. "I've already arranged a sabbatical exchange with their English department for the same period." The careful coordination, the thoughtfulness required to arrange this opportunity without manipulating or pressuring struck me as the clearest evidence of how far Olivia had come. "You did all this for me?" I asked softly. "For us," she corrected. "You once gave me the gift of accountability when it was the last thing I wanted, but the first thing I needed. This is my way of giving you the gift of opportunity, a chance to expand your horizons just when you might be tempted to settle into comfort." The wisdom in her words and the genuine care behind them brought tears to my eyes. "When did you become so insightful?" I wondered aloud. "I had an excellent teacher," she replied simply. Later that night, as Daniel and I prepared for bed, I found myself reflecting on the symmetry of our journey. Where once I had crafted a difficult lesson for Olivia about consequences and independence, she had now created an opportunity for me that demonstrated genuine care rather than calculation. "She's really changed," Daniel observed, reading my thoughts as he often did. "The transformation goes beyond behavior to fundamental character." "Yes," I agreed, though I sometimes wonder how much was transformation and how much was revelation of what was always there beneath the defenses. "Perhaps both," he suggested. "The best growth usually is." I thought of the frightened 3-year-old I'd first met at the adoption agency, wary, withdrawn, already armored against a world that had given her little reason to trust. The calculating teenager she'd become, weaponizing charm and manipulation as survival skills. The reflective young woman who'd gradually learned to replace strategy with authenticity. None of these was the real Olivia. All were genuine facets of a complex person shaped by trauma, choice, consequence, and growth. Just as the anxious, self-sacrificing mother I'd been, the boundary-setting parent I'd become, and the confident professional I was now were all authentic expressions of my own evolving self. "What are you thinking?" Daniel asked as we settled into bed. "That life rarely gives us the stories we expect," I replied. "But sometimes, if we're brave enough to face difficult truths, it gives us the stories we need." He smiled, understanding as he always did. "And this story, has it been worth the painful chapters?" I thought of Olivia's face as she'd announced her news tonight, the genuine desire to create opportunity for me, the thoughtful consideration of what would serve my growth rather than her convenience. How far we'd both come from that devastating party where I'd overheard her cruel dismissal. Every page, I assured him, even the hardest ones. In the morning, I would find the official offer from Michigan in my inbox. Daniel and I would begin planning our semester away. Olivia would start preparing for her graduate program. Life would continue its forward motion, bringing new challenges and opportunities. But in this moment, I simply savored the knowledge that sometimes the most painful fractures create space for the most profound healing. That sometimes we must lose the relationships we thought we wanted to discover the authentic connections we truly need, and that it's never too late to begin a new chapter or to rewrite the story of who we might become. Some families are born of blood, others are forged by choice, but those that survive the flames of truth are the ones that truly matter. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.